Well, it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We're showing that Rich is out and so is Kathy today. Approval of the December 3rd minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? And if so, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I so move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Approval of today's agenda. I'd entertain a motion for approval for today's agenda.
I so move.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. For the audience members, if you don't have an agenda, you can find them on the back bookshelf so you can follow along of what's on our agenda today. PJ, consent agenda.
PJ Conover, Director, Planning Department. Quite a few again today. Consent agenda. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from consent agenda by the Planning Commission, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of the Planning Commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make the final decisions. Item 3, conditional use permit review 9242 for Sunnyside Mobile Home Court to review a mobile home park in the suburban residential district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 9242 to the June 10th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Item 4, conditional use permit review 1525 for Rushmore Shadows LLC to review a recreational resort with the addition of 45 RV sites to the subject property in a highway service district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 1525 to the February 11th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Item 5, conditional use permit review 1620 for Perry and Vicky Van Newkirk to review a pole barn constructed prior to a residential structure in a subject property in a low-density residential district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 1620 to the February 25th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Item 6, conditional use permit review 1722 for Pamela Phillips to review a single-wide mobile home to be used as a permanent single-family residence on the subject property in the suburban residential district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 1722 to no later than the February 25th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Item 7, conditional use permit review 1830 for Hayden Clark to allow a single-wide mobile home to be used as a single-family residence on the subject property in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 1830 to no later than the April 22nd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting per the applicant's request. Item 8, conditional use permit 1843 for Border States Paving to allow a temporary asphalt batch plant and contractor storage yard on the subject property in the general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1843 with 14 conditions. Item 9, conditional use permit 1844 for Edward McMowen to allow for a ranch hand residence on the subject property in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1844 with 10 conditions. Item 10, conditional use permit 1845 for Lynn Scheel, Renner Associates as the agent, to allow for a community cemetery in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1845 with 5 conditions. Item 11, major plan unit development amendment review, PU 1740 for Kelly Development. Ryan Kelly is the agent to review the existing plan unit development in accordance with Section 213 of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. Staff recommends to continue the review of major plan unit development amendment review 1740 to the January 14th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting with 2 conditions. Item 12, minor plat 1843 for Robert Rowell, Renner Associates as the agent to create lots 3 of Jones Ranch subdivision in accordance with Section 400.3 of the Pennington County subdivision regulations. Staff recommends approval of minor plat 1843 with 7 conditions. Item 13, minor plat 1844 for John and Barbara Wilson, Fisk Land Surveying as the agent to create lots 1 and 2 of Castle Creek Estates. Staff recommends approval of minor plat 1844 with 8 conditions. Item 14, minor plat 1847 and subdivision regulation variance 1814 for Brett and Linda Hilgeman to create lots A and B of Nautilus Acre Subdivision Number 2 and to waive platting requirements in accordance with Section 400.3 and 700.1 of the Pennington County subdivision regulations. Staff recommends to continue subdivision regulation variance 1814 and minor plat 1847 to no later than the April 22nd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. And item 15, minor plat 1848 and subdivision regulation variance 1813 for TDG Real Estates. Michael Gennaro is the agent to create Hermosa Tract and Glendale Tract in accordance with sections 400.3 and 700.1 of the Pennington County subdivision regulations. Staff recommends approval of subdivision regulation variance 1813 and approval of minor plat 1848 with 12 conditions.
All right, are there any items that staff would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Number 11, please.
Number 11. Any other items? All right, membership, is there any items that would be removed?
I would like to ask a question regarding number 6 and number 10, please.
So 6 and 10, so we'll remove 6, 10, and 11. Audience members, any of those items that just were read, items number 3 through 15, if there's any of those items you'd like to have removed off the consent agenda and considered separately, this is the time to come forward and let us know. All right, so currently I see that we have items 3 through 5, 7 through 9. Let's see, 10, 11, 12 through 15. If I've got those numbers correct, that would be what our consent agenda is. And if that's the case, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 6.
Yeah, I'm just concerned. It appears as if there's just a lot of issues with the garage that don't have a lot to do with, the use of the single-wide mobile home. And I just wondered if that was the reason for the extension, or if this was just something that came up in the review process.
This came up some time ago during the review process. The applicant had spoken with staff who's not here anymore and had drawn from those conversations that they could put what they're considering a temporary carport up on their property. When they put it up, they put solid sides on and a garage door. It also goes into the setback, into an easement, and crosses property lines. So we've just been working with them. It's not a high priority on our point.
Sure.
But we have been working with them to try and bring this into compliance.
Yeah,
So
it just appeared as if they were confused or had issues, and you had been chosen as their specific contact person.
I had been working with them, and we've been working along fine, and the owner of the property to the south, who is the daughter of the person who owns the property north, she had been wanting to do some development on her property, and we haven't held her up from that. We've actually approved her permits for her. So we're just trying to work with them. Like, again, it's not a priority, but
Yeah,
we're
I
trying to make
understand.
progress with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions on this item? All
No.
right, current recommendation is to continue CU 1722 to no later than the February 25th Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion to the effect?
So
Yes,
moved.
I move that it be approved.
Motion and seconded? I heard two motions, actually, so who's going to?
Yes, I don't know.
Second.
Second? Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 10.
Yeah, and this was just a minor thing. Under item 10, on page 2 of 6, under agenda item 10, page 2 of 6, under Roman numeral number 4, the county addressing coordinator said that the address must be posted. And then on page 6 of 6, it says, if an address is assigned, and it sounded as if it was supposed to be assigned, so it did not appear to me to be a hypothetical anymore, but rather an absolute request that the cemetery have an address.
I have to work with our, Cassie Bolstead, Assistant Planning Director, I have to work with our addressing coordinator to see if this property or this portion of the property will actually need an address because it's not becoming its own lot. It'll just be a cemetery that exists on the larger lot. So I have to work with him to see if that will actually require an address. Likely it will, but I left it that way so that if it does not need to be assigned an address, that he wouldn't be in violation, or she wouldn't be in violation of the conditions.
Commissioner, if I can piggyback on that, the word must is being used in how it needs to be posted in accordance with the county ordinance. So that's where the word must is.
I don't know what you just said. I'm sorry.
So the way that the comment reads is, I've lost it here. An address may need to be assigned. That's the end of the first sentence in the addressing coordinator's comments. And then the address must be posted in accordance with Pennington County Ordinance number 20.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions on this item? Seeing none, current recommendation is approval of CU 1845 with the following 5 conditions. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 11, please.
Item 11 is Major Plan Unit Development 1704, which is a review of PUD 1704 for Ryan Kelly and Ryan Kelly as the agent, Kelly Development as the contractor. It was originally recommended for continuation to January 14th with 2 conditions. After the staff report and the packets were done, we got confirmation from the HOA, that the lots 3 through 6, or what they consider Tract B, are part of the HOA, which was the outstanding condition that we didn't know about. So the memo that was handed out today for you and made available to the public is basically a request to change the recommendation to a continuation of Major Plan Unit Development Amendment 1704 to January 14th, 2019 with no conditions. So we're taking the 2 conditions out.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
What it says in my mind is Major Plan Unit Development Amendment Review PU 17-40. Is that a mistake?
Which one are you
In the memo, it
looking?
says 04. And
Staff reports are showing 04. What page are you on?
It's
I don't know, 3,
Oh, it's on the agenda that way. Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
I remember reading 40 somewhere too, unless I was dyslexic in my reading, but I remember reading 40 and I saw,
It's on page 3 of the documents, the agenda.
that's part of the
I assume
agenda.
that's just
11
the-
shows 40.
Yeah, the numbers got transposed, it's 04.
So it's
Okay.
really 04. Thank you.
All right, sir. Any further questions on this? If not, current recommendation is, as PJ just stated, did you say continue it, right, PJ?
Continue to
Everything's
January
continued.
14th with no conditions.
With no conditions. I'd entertain a motion for that.
So move. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 16.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Proetti, Planner 1 for Planning and Zoning. Item 16 is Layout Plat 1845, PL 1845, excuse me, to create Hicks Tract of HES number 527 with the remaining balance to be unplatted. The lot is currently zoned as General Agricultural District with a total of 140.61 acres, with 6.68 acres being designated to the proposed Hicks Tract. The applicant is proposing to create Hicks Tract with approximately 6.68 acres, which does not meet the minimum lot size requirement for General Agricultural District per Section 205 of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. Therefore, a rezone and comprehensive plan amendment or lot size variance will be required. Excuse me. Currently, there are no structures on the Hicks Tract. However, there is special flood hazard area on the property. Both the Hicks Tract and the unplatted balance are to gain access from the existing Ditch Creek Road. And there are no other concerns for this property, and staff is recommending approval with 10 conditions.
Any questions for staff? Any members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? All right, current recommendation, staff recommends approval of layout plat 1845 with the following 10 conditions. I'd entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
Motion and second. All in any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 17.
Good afternoon, Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. Item 17 is a layout plat 1846 and subdivision regulation variance 1812 to combine two lots to create one lot. The applicant, Samuel E. Fisher, is also requesting subdivision regulation variances to waive the following plating requirements: percolation test and soil profile hole information, topographic map at 5-foot contour intervals, a plat scale at 1 inch equals 100 foot, road improvements and design standards, length of a dead-end road, and intermediate turnarounds. As the property exists today, it's consisted of two lots, zone general agriculture district. Each lot is approximately 20 acres. They are both vacant of any structures, and they currently are accessed by Trixie Lane, which a portion of it is a road easement through U.S. Forest Service lands. This item was routed through the interdepartmental review. The only item of concern came up from the highway department concerning the width of the road. And staff did reach out to the Forest Service regarding this concern. And actually, the Forest Service concurs with the request to waive those requirements because the Forest Service may not approve any kind of additional disturbance in width of that road through Forest Service lands. I did receive that after the staff report was written on Friday. As far as the subdivision regulation variances, staff feels that this percolation test and profile hole information can be addressed during building permit submittal. The topography at 5-foot intervals, at this time 20-foot contour intervals are suffice to determine topographic information on a 40-acre lot. The plat at 1 inch equals 100 foot. Staff believes that the 1 inch per 200-foot scale is adequate to see all necessary information on the plat. Road improvements and design standards. The layout plat is actually to decrease density from 2 lots to 1 lot, so staff does not feel that road improvements are necessary at this time. And the length of the dead-end road, the same. Layout plat is to decrease the density by 1 lot. And same with the intermediate turnaround. Like I said before, the only item of concern that came up was the road width. So staff is recommending approval of subdivision regulation variances, and staff is recommending approval of the layout plat with 8 conditions.
Any questions for staff?
Are there any homes on this?
No, both lots are vacant. There
Okay.
are other homes off of Trixie Lane, just not
Sure.
off on these 2 lots.
What is the purpose? Why does he want it combined into one lot?
And just for passing purposes, sometimes it's difficult to pass on some of those narrow roads. Staff did try to go up there to do a site visit, and the road was icy and difficult to pass at the time. But typically the county highway likes to see a 20-foot wide road at least just for passing, so
I'm
2
sorry.
cars could pass.
He wants to take 2 lots, put them into one because of a road?
No, that's not what, you were
That's
asking.
why they're
Misunderstood.
combining.
Oh, why they're combining?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I do not know that. The agent is here if you have questions for her. It wasn't stated in the application. They just said that they wanted to combine 2 lots into one.
Janelle, can you just tell me why they want to do this? I mean, maybe it doesn't make any difference, but I'm just curious.
Janelle Fink with Fisk Land Surveying here on behalf of Mr. Fisher and Fisher Development. I believe that the purpose for consolidation is kind of twofold. Number one, the property is currently zoned general ag, and both of those lots are only 20 acres. When we combine them together, then it brings the property into compliance with the zoning ordinance. And it also reduces, I think, potentially the tax liability to have 1 parcel versus 2 parcels.
Yeah, and that
So-
was my thought. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On this road, is this section that's problematic, presumably, on Forest Service property, on the easement? Is that
It's
right?
on both Forest Service and private property within the easement. The easement looks like it's 66 foot wide, but in most cases, the road is 12 foot.
So it's not just one particular section, it's the whole road is narrow, is that what you're saying?
Right, this is the highway department's comments. It says, the road is about 24 foot wide until it makes a hairpin turn on Forest Service land where it narrows down to about 12 feet.
Okay,
It would be advisable to widen the road starting at the curve in the subject property, continuing through the hill to where the road exists on the subject property to allow vehicles to safely pass.
oh, okay, but the actual, the turn that's really problematic is on Forest Service land, but it would require some, I suppose, grading at some distance in order to solve that problem if you were to do it.
Correct, and if you look at the map, it's to the northwest there, that's the portion where the 31 is where the Forest Service land is. And if you look kind of where the P is in the rapid map, that's where it turns. 'Cause
Okay. I always think these roads are interesting because someday this is gonna be a problem. And somebody's gonna develop some property in the area and we're gonna say, geez, you gotta do something about this road. And, I'm not saying that we need to do anything now perhaps, but I'm always struck at how these are all potential developments. Like we're going to reduce the density because we're going down to one. But much of the land out there is empty, so it's potential reduction, right?
Well, at this
Not like
time,
we're
yeah.
somehow reducing, it's potential reduction, yeah. So ultimately, we could have all kinds of problems with these roads if we don't, at some point, take care of them. But we wait until somebody shows up and starts putting up a house before we have to address them, I assume.
We don't address these during building permits. The roads are addressed during the plating process.
Right.
That's what the subdivision regulations variance request.
Yeah. Okay, I'm fine with the situation. I was just ruminating.
Any further questions for staff? Any members of the audience like to make a comment or speak on behalf of this item? If not, current recommendation is staff recommends approval of subdivision regulation variance SV 1812 to waive the following plating requirements. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Second recommendation by staff reads approval of layout PL 1846 with the following 8 conditions. Is there a motion for that as well?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 18.
Just need 1 second, sir. All right, number 18 and 19 are related items. Item 18 is minor plat 1837 and subdivision regulations variance 1808 to combine 2 lots in order to create Neiman Trust land tract and to waive platting requirements in accordance with section 400.3 and 700.1 of this Pennington County subdivision regulation variance. The applicants are Paul and Carol Neiman, Paul is in the audience today. Surveyor is Anderson Surveying. This was before you several times. This actually started back in 2016 with a conditional use permit to allow an accessory structure prior to a principal structure. The applicant had been working for a long time with the state to be able to get a portion of the right-of-way on this picture seen here as Lot A into his name. So on May 25th, 2018, the South Dakota Transportation Commission allowed Mr. Neiman to have that property. I'm not sure how that all went down, but he has it now. So the minor plat and the subregs are to consolidate what you see here as Lot A and Lot O into Neiman Trust land tract. In addition with that, the applicant applied for subdivision regulation variance 1808 to waive engineered road construction plans and road improvements, submittal of topography map, plat scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, and percolation tests and profile hole information. The roads are existing, there's no increase in density, and staff has no issues with recommending approval of the waiver of those recommendations. So with that, staff has two recommendations. The first is staff recommends approval of subdivision regulation variance 1808 to waive submittal of the following: engineered road construction plans and road improvements, submittal of topography, and submittal of percolation tests and profile hole information. As you'll see there's only 3 of the 4 requests because only 3 of the 4 were actually needed.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Sonny.
PJ, I'm just wondering about this 2-year process from the South Dakota Transportation Commission. What is that all about? Why does it take so long?
That's probably a good question for the applicant. First, I can tell you from my experience with this back when this originally started, is the road on the west side, the Custer Gulch Road, nobody wanted to take ownership of it. The highway didn't, private landowners didn't, and state didn't. Eventually, Mr. Neiman was able to get somebody to commit and found out who owned it and was able to get part of that right away. So, but he would probably know the story much better since he lived it.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for staff? Any members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? Go ahead, come forward, sir.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Richard Van Ness. I own the lot to the east of adjacent to this property. And I'm just curious as to what the ultimate use is. It's not clear in any of the paperwork that I've got. So I'd like to know what's going to happen.
With the applicant being here, the landowner being here, I think it's probably best for him.
All right, is the landowner willing to come up and answer that question?
We intend on building a barn to begin with, and then a individual family dwelling. That's our intent. We purchased this land 22 years ago. I've been battling with both access, ownership denial, and such for that number of years. Starting 8 years ago, I started trying to understand who would take ownership of a titled, deeded easement that no one would recognize ownership, because until 1986, the state of South Dakota could not legally own titled easement. They can have easement, but they can't own it. I don't understand that part. And then they changed the law. Well, this happened in 1939. And so I spent the better part of my younger years trying to figure this out. I approached many people in the government, asked them specifically, what should I do? How should I do it? None of them would answer. So I spent the last 2 years trying to get it done. And finally, a very talented man at DOT, Mr. Zocker, up in Custer, he figured it out. And that's, to answer your specific question, that's how it became back to me. I was in front of the Pennington County Commissioners meeting back in 1998 regarding this, and they could not understand how all these acres were not taxed for the last 70 years. That's why.
Wow.
Good heavens.
All right, any other members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? Any further questions for staff? Current recommendation is approval of subdivision regulation variance SV 1808 to waive submittal of the following: engineered road construction plans and road improvements, 2 submittal of topography map, and 3 percolation test and profile hole information. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Commissioner, the second recommendation would be staff recommends approval of minor plat 1837 with 9 conditions.
Is there any questions for staff? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Also move.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Takes us to item number 19.
Item 19 is the same property. It's rezone 1807 and comprehensive plan amendment 1807 to rezone, I'm sorry, that's got to be comprehensive plan amendment 1806,
Say that again.
right? Rezone 1807 and comp plan 1806. Double checking with Jerry.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So the top of the staff report needs to change, the bottom is correct. Stop needs to be changed. So rezone 1807 and comprehensive plan amendment 1806 to rezone 16.7 acres of general agriculture district to limited agriculture district, and to amend the Pennington County comprehensive plan to change the future land use from plan unit development sensitive to limited agriculture. The applicant is Paul and Carol Neiman. Again, Mr. Neiman is here in the audience. Essentially, since there's a consolidation here and the property is right-of-way, which has no platting designation, and then also general agriculture, it needs a 40-acre minimum. The lot itself is going to be under 40 acres, but over 10, which then qualifies it for the limited agriculture zoning. So the applicant has requested a rezone from general agriculture to limited agriculture, which staff supports, and then also applied for a comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use from plan unit development sensitive, pictured here on the wall or the screens, to limited agriculture, which would be the dark green. Staff is recommending denial of that. There's no limited agriculture in the area. We'd like to keep it plan unit development sensitive, and staff did discuss this with the applicant. So there's 2 recommendations.
Gotcha. Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sonny.
Why would they want to change it to limited agriculture instead of just keep a PUD? Is there
Instead of keeping it
some
PUD?
benefit to making it limited ag?
It was just what he was planning to do. That was the rezone request in the first place. During staff's further review into this, limited agriculture wasn't the way to go. So we've talked with them about it, and staff's going to recommend at the board level memo that we can reimburse the comprehensive plan amendment money back.
Okay, any further questions?
No, that's good, thanks.
Any members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? All right. Recommendation staff recommends approval of rezone 1807. We'll take that one as its own. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. And the second recommendation, staff recommends denial of comp plan amendment 1806. Is there a motion?
I will move for the denial.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 20.
Thank you. All right, 1 second here. All right. Item number 20 is rezone 1809 and comprehensive plan amendment 1807 to rezone 69.62 acres from general commercial district and general agriculture district to general commercial district, and to rezone 560 acres from general commercial district, general agriculture district, and low-density residential district to heavy industrial district, and to amend the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan to change the future land use from general commercial district, limited agriculture district, and low-density residential district. Don't worry, we got pictures. Okay, that's a lot. All right, so essentially, this is the property that the applicant is involving in the rezone today. They're all outlined in yellow, except for this half of this section. Everything kind of west of that, outlined in that yellowish red, is what's involved with the rezone today. This is the applicant's request. Black is heavy industrial, red is general commercial, yellow is low-density residential, and the light green, kind of mint color, is general agriculture. This is the zoning as it exists today. As you can see, there's kind of a swath of general commercial along Highway 79, and what was created as a buffer zoning of general commercial along the north side along that section line. There is low-density residential in the southeast corner of the properties that are involved with this, but the rest of that is general, general agriculture. As you will see, in a little bit of a difference here is the lots, the 40-acre parcels parcels that the applicant is looking to break this up into don't exist yet. They do on the east side, but that big section in the middle, where it's shown here as 8 different 40-acre parcels, is still right now only 1. And similar to the property on the southeast side, it's still only 1 big 160-acre piece, but they're looking to break that up into 4 as well. There is considerable history with this property. Let's go back to the zoning again. So this is the current land use. This is the current zoning of the area. This is the Pennington County future land use, which has the general commercial along 79, then along the section line as a buffer. The centerpiece, which on the current land use is general agriculture, is this darker green, hunter green for limited agriculture, and then also the low-density residential in the southeast corner, which is yellow. This is the city's metropolitan planning organization's future land use. As you know, the city has a planning jurisdiction that in some areas goes out as much as 3 miles. So it actually touches the northwest corner of the subject properties. What this is showing is that the city's future land use for the area from the southeast corner of city limits down 79 are actually light industrial and heavy industrial, and they do kind of cross over the subject property, but basically stop along that section line. So the light gray is light industrial for the city zoning districts, and the black is heavy industrial. Again, this is the applicant's request showing their zoning with the color codes with the city's MPO to the north. Let's go back a little bit here. So on this property, there are, sorry, I got to get down. Oh, it's all in the staff report, sorry. On the subject property, there is also a contractor storage yard and a go-kart track. There's also a floodplain in the northeast corner and an airstrip for an airplane for banners and things like that. All of those have conditional use permits under a different landowner's name. The new landowner is aware that those conditional use permits do transfer with the property. From conversations with the new owner and the agent, is they are looking to eventually end those conditional use permits, and that contractor storage yard would be moved up to the northeast corner, kind of across from the DC tie over to here. Would require a conditional use permit to do that, but would also get it off of the Highway 79. They are in the process of cleaning up the property. Staff was just out there last Friday, and they are making progress. There are some things that need to be still discovered, I would say, by staff, and that's mainly with the 2 section lines. This is the section line to the south. Sorry, I'm going back here a little bit. So the section line to the north, what we can determine as far as actual paperwork is that a portion of the section line for about here was allowed to be improved, and that section line was opened for the previous owner, the Morrises. And then sometime in the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years or whatever, Basin Electric was allowed to improve a half mile of that section line. There are no maps that show where that half mile is, but what we do know is that from here to here is actually a mile. So there's a half mile or a quarter mile or a third of a mile that we don't know where the authorization was to improve that section line. We're sure it's there. We just haven't found it yet. We've talked with some past planners who have been doing some research and trying to find it. We know the answer is there somewhere. We don't think that that should be an issue that really holds up the decision today, but it is something that we're looking for. Now, with that, again, another section line on this property actually exists down to the south, and that's this section line right here. through anecdotal evidence, basically conversations with old planners that used to work for the county, they feel that there was approval 30 years ago to open up that section line. In talking with a planner that worked for the county who now works for the city, she says she does remember that section line being open for a Pat Foley, who still owns some property in the area. But back then, when they did it, they didn't really do staff reports like we do today. So it might be inside meeting minutes from multiple board meetings if you can go back and look through them all. So we're still going to do that. But again, we don't think it should hold anything up today. The improvement of that section line only goes out to only about, and I'm guessing here, maybe about here or here, and then loops around. So to improve the rest of that section line to gain access to the properties that the applicant is looking to rezone and create eventually would need further improvement of that section line and opening up the rest of it. So old properties, lots of history. That's why these staff reports are so long, because we try to document everything as current as we can get it.
Can I ask a question
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
middle?
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry. When you're talking about the section lines being open, are you talking about them being improved with a road for access?
Those things usually go hand in hand, yes. Sometimes a portion of a section line is open for a driveway to go to bisect it.
I see.
Other times it could be depending on if waivers are approved, it could be a two-track
Okay.
trail, but there are county specifications for
Okay,
an
and then
approved section line.
if it were open, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
the cost of the improvement of the road is the cost of whoever owns the property? Or is it county expense, state highway expense?
Things to be discussed. That's what we
Ah.
don't know, yeah.
Okay.
That section to the north, that half mile, that Basin
Sure.
Electric, they paid for that.
Who do you mean
Basin
they?
Electric did. When they came in to request to open it, the board put on them the expense to
I see.
improve it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have other questions, but you can continue
problem.
on now.
The
Thank
southern
you.
property line, in discussions with the previous owner, and I was talking with him today, he said that he did put the improvements in the southern section line back in the 80s. He was thinking sometime before 85, which is in line with what we were told from the previous planner that worked here. So, needle in a haystack. We just weren't able to find it within the time we had. But again, we
Sure.
don't think it should really hold things up right now, because it will be addressed at a future date. Other items of note that we noticed this weekend, just so you guys are aware, there's a lake, a pond in the northeast corner. Again, there's some floodplain that goes out into that. We noticed that there was some dirt work out there, which appeared to be over 10,000 square feet, which would require a construction permit. Also, they did some work into the floodplain, so it would require a floodplain development permit. The gentleman came in today, picked up the required applications to take care of it. He understands that no further work can be done on that except for erosion and sediment control or safety reasons until those are approved. With that, with the applicant's request, I don't think I have the topography in here. They're looking to, again, with the heavy industrial basically here, those are currently zoned low-density residential at 40 acres apiece. But they want to change that to heavy industrial. Usually what is required from the county is some type of buffer. And like we discussed before, the county required a general commercial buffer along the north side to break up the request for residential to the south of the section line. Again, that was probably within the last 2 or 3 years. The applicant is stating that there is topography enough so that this this heavy industrial and this low-density residential, that the topography that's there, the natural topography, will act as a natural buffer. There are topographical maps in your staff reports to show you kind of what the elevation is. I did go out and take some pictures. So this is a picture close to 79 looking east. And you can see some of the hills that are out there that they're discussing, and get me if I'm wrong, but they believe that's the natural buffer that they're talking about. Driving down the road, driving down that southern section line a little bit further, you can kind of still see some of that topography.
This is the south.
This is the south section line looking east. Yep. This is standing on that south section line looking down towards Basin Electric, basically straight north. This is the DC tie right there. This is on top of the hill because that section line isn't flat. It kind of raises up a little bit. This is on top looking to the east, and you can kind of see the valley go down in some of the hills. Again, there's another view of that. Another view. And let me get you to where I want to be here. Okay, now this is actually on the east side of the subject property, looking west. This is standing on Old Folsom Road, looking from those low-density residential lots towards the heavy industrial, and you can kind of see where it dips down, and then there's the topography again. So I wanted to show you both sides of it, and that's the end of that part of it. The applicant was granted 2 approach permits from the County Highway Department off of Old Folsom Road. Thank goodness for technology. Basically, and I think I'm getting these right, one here and one here off of Old Folsom Road.
Are there currently homes on that low-density residential area?
Not on these. No, there are homes up here,
Okay,
which are unrelated, but they're in close proximity.
okay.
Originally, the County Highway Department denied a previous request for accesses off of Old Folsom Road without improvements. And I put that into the staff report, but it needs to be noted that that request was for 2,500 homes down there. So that would be a massive, heavy density, high density. And they didn't think Old Folsom Road would be able to take that. So what the Highway Department did in this request in granting the 2 approaches basically said, and if you look in the comments on page 12 of 19 and continuing on 13 of 19, they're granting the 2 accesses, but saying that if there's any negative impact, then the landowners are responsible to improve Old Folsom Road. So I asked the question how you define negative impact, and they included a definition of that for our comments and for the staff report today. So got to cover all the bases. I did also include in the staff report on page 17 and 18 what the uses in heavy industrial are. The reason I did that is because usually the request comes up is what, if it's zoned that, even though they may want to use it for use A, there's uses B through Z that anybody could do if it was zoned that, the current owner or a future owner. And I personally received several phone calls about this request. People more interested in just knowing what was going on, but not necessarily against it. Staff can't make a recommendation for approval, but staff also isn't going to make a recommendation for denial because the use of the land out there is conducive for highway service. The MPO for the city shows that there's a flow of light and heavy industrial to the north coming down to the south. It does clean up some of the zoning problems with this property. However, it is not in conformance with our comprehensive plan. So we're stuck right down through the middle.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
But does this dovetail with Rapid City's future plans for this area?
So I'll go back to that. This is the city's future land. Well, actually, the applicant provided one. If you look here, this gray and this black are city future land use zoning, or their MPO. Their black is heavy industrial, their gray is light industrial. Okay. And what the applicant provided below is what their zoning request is going to be, is all this. So except for the residential that's already there, the request for the heavy industrial is in line with the city's MPO.
The sections of light residential or residential, who owns that property? Is that part of this purchase, or is this owned by someone else?
This right here,
The,
that's the light industrial.
No, you're talking about
but
The low-density
yellow,
residential.
the yellow,
Oh.
the low density.
Who owns that?
it's,
This
Part of
part
that.
right here,
yeah, it's part of that.
the applicant, he also owns down here and here.
So if he's gonna, I guess my feeling is if he was gonna build homes and sell them to somebody, it would seem sort of foolish, wouldn't it? If he's gonna have heavy industrial right over the hill or right next door or whatever. So I don't know why we're protecting that interest. If that's, I know, if someone else owned that, I can see there might be some compelling interest in protecting that investment. But since, I mean, he may come back in a few months and want to rezone that area too. I mean, there's a road then that, Folsom Road is just to the east there. So I don't see that as a,
In planning, there's usually a step down in zoning. And this is going from heavy industrial, which is usually a type of use which is isolated,
right?
and it butts right up against a residential use. They are 40-acre parcels right now, but there can be any number of owners, any number of subdivisions in the future. I mean, anything could happen. What we normally do is a step-down type of zoning, but the applicant is making the argument, and we're not necessarily disagreeing, that there is natural topography there that acts as that buffer. However, we have seen hills removed.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand
down
that
there by
the
Cantrell.
topographical argument,
Yeah.
sort of, which might, I don't know, might prevail, but it doesn't seem very persuasive with me, but, I don't know.
Jim, I guess what you're saying is you think that if he's gonna rezone it to heavy industrial and leave the light residential there, that he's the one who would lose because he might not sell it to somebody who wants.
Yeah, who's gonna buy a house? and
Residential.
Say, oh, yeah, we have a steel plant next door to you here, but, you know, there's a hill.
Yep.
I don't think that's gonna be very persuasive. I mean,
Yeah, well,
Or-
it's at his risk. I mean, he
Yeah.
is risking the lesser ability to market that by having it zoned, because I agree with you, having low-density residential next to heavy industrial or,
That's correct.
yeah,
Now,
is somewhat absurd.
let me ask this question. What happens if he develops the light industrial, or the light industrial,
Heavy,
the residential area first, and then will there be a requirement to have a step down if the residential area is developed first? Or once it's zoned, then it's there? And see, that could be it's a
so
problem,
the problem could be that then the heavy industrial could follow
residential
the
development.
residential development, which would create a problem if you happen to have,
but the zoning
500
would be in place.
Yeah,
And I
true.
contend people buying, building, developing should have enough foresight to see how the land beside them is zoned instead of hollering later
Yeah.
when they want permits to do something that is already allowed.
I agree, but there's a
Sorry.
lot of people who don't.
Well, that comes down to, yeah, I feel the same way. But on the other hand, it seems like sometimes it's incumbent upon us somehow to kind of protect people for being foolish. You know, say, well, why didn't you check it out? Well, you know, a lot of people aren't real, you know, sensitive to those issues. You know, but the question becomes, when does our responsibility for protecting future, you know, purchases of land,
Yeah.
where does it start, where does it end? And I don't know that. That's too complicated, I guess, for my pay grade.
The most recent buffer rezones that the planning commission had recommended and the board approved were this general commercial along the top, which is looking to be replaced with the heavy industrial, and also the concrete, or the batch plant out by the airport by the soccer fields. There was required to be a buffer there, but not of this size. Oh, there is no size request right here, but those were the last two buffer requests. But they were considerably smaller lots, the batch plant, and there was already an existing residence to the north.
Right, it was already
It
existing.
was already there, yeah.
And they didn't, I think they did that on purpose, just to help mitigate.
They knew what they needed to do. yeah.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I've been around a long time and we've had nothing but problems with this property. So I'll be damn happy to get anything done out there that isn't what it is now.
Yeah, this property, yeah, it's been around a while, hasn't it, for,
It's been on the dockets many a times. Is there any further questions for staff?
It'd just be great if they just put a steel plant out there. That'd just solve all the problems and kind of unify the thing, and some reference here to cleaning up the property, if that's what it is. And I do feel a little frustrated by the whole thing, but, anyway.
Any further questions from staff?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Sonny.
So on this south section line, is the only access off of 235? Or is there,
79.
there's also a
79.
79 access down there as well?
That is
I know of the 79 access. I'm not sure of any other access to it. There may be something that comes down from a property further to the south, maybe by the trap club, but I haven't taken that.
Just wondering how they would have access to those, to the southern half of those lots.
Honey, I'm more than happy to answer that.
Yeah.
If you want to from a developer standpoint.
Yeah,
Come forward and state your name, sir, please.
My name's Pat Hall. Myself and Mr. Hammerbeck acquired the property. And the south section line is accessed from 79. And it would serve then those southern lots that are still zoned residential. The road is not opened all the way over to Old Folsom Road, and probably won't be unless the county decided, because the topography is such that you couldn't do it, so the access will only be from 79.
and how about these two approach permits that were approved by County Highway? Are those intended to be used off of Old Folsom?
Yes, those will be Old Folsom to service the residential area, you know.
Okay.
And it isn't our intention to come back at this point, you know, and do any kind of residential development. Certainly won't be of any consequences because soils can't stand 2,600 homes. We don't have any plans for anything like that. There's a need in the Rapid City market for 5-acre, 10-acre, 20-acre, and 40-acre lots. And of course, if we do anything below 40, we have to go to the city, you know, and go through a plating process. So, you know, that isn't the plan now. To accomplish what we want to do, then we know what our guidelines are. That's when you go out and hire, you know, the consultants and you do a feasibility study of the property. But in this day and age, you don't go do the feasibility studies of properties before you know what the zoning is, because the cost is so high.
So it sounds like any industrial traffic could have access from 79 and not Old Folsom?
Yeah, there will be none that'll come through industrial traffic to Old Folsom Road. I think it'd be a mistake if the county in the future opened it up, but I can't control that. That'd be up to the county. And the highway department said they have no plan to do that. I hope that answered your question. We're going to make this hopefully a big improvement to the area and create some tax base for the county that should have been done a long time ago. Just too much planning and not enough results, huh?
I had another question, either you or maybe staff could answer about the floodplain, because we didn't get a map of that. Is that a floodplain going right through the middle? And is that anything of concern?
Not really an area, not a concern for this rezone. No, the floodplain actually comes up through here and just kind of goes over just a little bit.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, but it is something
There on
that,
the right.
I said there was a representative here today that picked up the applications for that.
So that, what looks like a little creek going through the middle is not floodplain?
No, no, sir.
Okay.
That's the only place in the property where there's floodplain, that northeast corner.
All right.
Very, very little of it, but it's still there, unfortunately.
Any further questions for Mr. Pat Hall while he's up here? All right, thank you. Any further questions for staff? Any members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? All right, whoever would like to come first, state your name.
Hi, my name's Paul Elder. I'm just curious, nobody's ever said what the plan is. I mean, we're talking heavy industrial, and I understand that maybe it's moving that way, but it sure feels like we're just dropping that out in the middle of nowhere at this point. If there's some kind of massive plant going in, there is a development to the south, further Black Gap. A lot of those residents would surely be impacted by traffic and any other things that would potentially go on in heavy industrial. So just wanted to make sure that was at least discussed and that those folks were aware.
All right, we can ask if they have a grand plan yet, if they're willing to share.
Well, no, you get your grand planned after you get your zoning because of the expenses of going through it. But I would respectfully say that, you know, if you have industrial on Highway 79, that's what it was designed for, you know, which could be the people that live further south, I certainly understand. And if you look at the north section line, I think we all know why we've got to be industrial up against that. You'll never have any form of residential. As a matter of fact, I thought commercial along that east, west, northern was not feasible because they aren't going to want to be up against that power station. So, I mean, we will comply with all plating requirements and we will stay within the heavy industrial zoning. So I think you'll find in that amount of acreage compared to, say, a development like the gentleman mentioned with the housing area down, you're going to have far less impact on the highway than you would with that same density of residential. So I think all I can do is assure them, as well as the county, we will comply with everything that is required for permitting within that area. And to me, that's the only zoning that really makes any sense for that area. You just can't put forms of residential in that kind of close proximity. Anything else? Was that helpful, I hope? And
Yeah, they've
So
got
far
other
for us.
people, so.
They've got other questions, so
Sure.
thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Hintz. I'm the Vice President of the Black Gap HOA Housing Development. Thank you all for listening to me. If you could bring the map up, the rapid map that kind of showed the whole overall area. I'd like to show the commissioners where Black Gap is in relation to this land plot. If you could, if it's possible, just kind of zoom in. We're really close to this area. And I apologize for the, I was just informed of this meeting today. Our concern, even though we have a little bit of concern with the traffic, our biggest concern is with potentially what's going to go in there. Asphalt plant, concrete plant, the dust, what could go in there? I have, if I can approach you, it's called a wind rose. And I'll hand this out. I'll start over here. What that shows is the average wind direction for Rapid City going from January 1st of 1970 all the way to December 9th of this year. And you'll see that the predominant wind direction in Rapid City is north-northwest and actually kind of gusty. Anywhere from 15 miles an hour or higher. That means whatever goes in there is going to blow over our subdivision. Again, dust, smoke, if it's a chemical plant of some sort, it's going to go right over the top of us. That's our biggest concern with whatever's going to go in there if this is rezoned heavy industrial. And that map can be found publicly. The web address is on the bottom of that map. And so, yeah, we understand the traffic is a potential problem for Highway 79. Highway 79's 4-lane, it's built for it, and we get that. But our biggest concern is Black Gap. We have young kids there. We got retirees coming in there. Is air quality, the dust, devaluation of homes with what could potentially blow into our subdivision. And so speaking for our HOA again as vice president, we can't support this rezoning.
How would you like it zoned?
I guess, as it's been. I mean, I've not been here long enough. I admit I've only been in Rapid City for 3.5 years,
I see.
but we can't support something that's gonna potentially put dust or smoke or whatever over our subdivision. We just can't support that, or we're not in favor of it. And that's why I'm here talking to y'all.
Dave, how far away is Black Gap from
From
that area?
this, no more than 2 miles. I mean, the skeet range is just over the top of the hill, and then you have this. I mean, I think where that red dashed line is up on the top is the southern section line that you guys were talking about. Let's see.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's pretty close.
I'll just go from this section, well, can't get it all.
Right, Black Saddle Road is the edge of our subdivision. 1.25 miles.
From that southern section line we were talking about to north edge of Black Gap.
Not even that.
1.13 miles roughly.
Yeah. So that's our biggest concern that I wanted to voice to y'all today. So,
I think your concerns are totally legitimate when you talk about industrial, but we don't know yet what it would be. If there was something, smoke, dust, the permitting process would address those things at that time. But we could get industrial uses that have no effect on you either. So to say you can't do industrial at all would be eliminating a lot of things that wouldn't affect you either.
I just wanted y'all to know our concerns. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. I believe I saw a couple other hands. I'll let the gentleman back there come up here.
Hi, my name is Lester Freeze, and I live in that little piece right there on the corner of Old Folsom and Lamb. I bought that 6 acres 3 years ago, put my house there, moved my family out there, and every night when I sit and eat dinner, I look over what they want to develop. And it was all agricultural when I moved in there. When the gentleman started doing the illegal activity, the fill work and whatnot, the construction work that went on in the northern corner up there by the power plant, that's what I sat and watched every night as I ate my dinner. I put my house there for a specific reason. I like the agriculture. I like the open prairie. I can see the Needles Highway. I can see it all. I can see Black Gap. I can see their homes from my home. I like it. See, and we're not saying what we're going to do there. We just want to get it rezoned is what we want to do. And I get that. But that's the first step to what kind of change. Heavy industrial is heavy industrial. You know, I mean, if you want to build 500 homes out there, let's build some houses. That's great. I don't mind neighbors. But I don't really want a smelting plant in my front yard either. So, you know, that's my concern. You know, we built there for a specific reason. We like the open prairie. We figured we were out far enough. I know the power plant is there. When we first looked at it, I was like, eh. But as time went on and we looked at other properties, we decided this is the one. I can overlook that.
So you feel that instead of it being zoned heavy industrial, it should all be zoned low-density residential?
Leave it in agricultural, I believe is what it is. Leave it what it is.
I
I enjoy
see.
sitting there watching the cattle. They run cattle on it now. It's not like the land is not used. It is used. Agriculturally is what it's used for right now. The biggest stir that's gone on there is the guy that started doing the backfill and whatnot, the work that evidently he started and did illegally. I wasn't really too proud of that either, but it happened, you know.
I don't know.
It's a beautiful area. You know, the pictures that were taken were pretty good pictures. And they all went right to the edge of my house. You couldn't quite see my house. It's a little flatter than what you think. Like I said, I sit there right there in the corner, and I can see every stitch of that. There's a couple little low spots that I can't see. I can see Black Gap from my house. I can see every stitch of it. It's all pretty flat. There's a little bit of rise, but that rise isn't enough deflection to hide anything down there.
Sure.
You couldn't hide a dump truck in there if you wanted to. It's pretty open, flat territory. So if you want to, you know, put up a grove of trees or something, that's, you know, that's a grove of trees in front of whatever else you put there. You'd still see it from my house. So,
Thank you.
Can you say again?
all I
where-
ask is you think about it from your perspective. If it was happening in your backyard, think about it that way.
Where was your place again?
My place is if you look there in the corner of Lamb Road there, that first place there, there's a
This one right here.
rectangular, yep, with a dirt patch, that's my house right there. And it sits right on top of a ridge. There's absolutely no obstruction of any kind of any of that. I mean, I can see for miles, I can see the Needles Highway, the Needles from my house. Black Gap, I can see it all, everything. Everything that's out there is visible from my home. Built there for a reason, it's beautiful. Old country boy, love my prairie. And by the way, I apologize, I know you guys are sick of hearing it, but, you know,
good
3 years
place,
ago, I
there's no
made the
doubt.
decision, so.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
Any-
we
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate your time.
Any further questions for Lester, just out of curiosity? All right, I saw another hand up. Sir, if you'd like to come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is David Lamb, and I'm the landowner adjoining there, and we own some other land in the area.
Can you go ahead and repeat that and just lean in a little bit so I can hear?
Okay. We're interested in discussing the property because we are the adjoining landowner, and then we have a lot of connections to the other people there. Some of them are developing the property and so on. And a couple of things that come to mind is the water flows that water properties down below do come across there. And would that kind of thing be dealt with and managed to create places where that could be maintained and so on, and not necessarily paved over and disappear? But, and a further point is just that I think we have a gateway to Rapid City unless tourism becomes unimportant to the area and the community values. We should try to make sure that when we develop things in some of these areas along these gateway routes, they are done in such a way that we still have a community left that you want to drive around in. It's getting to be a little bit not that way in Rapid City already now due to lack of infrastructure. So I'd say that those two things should be accommodated in a plan when it's along a gateway route like this. Doesn't mean it should be anything in particular. It should be something that is not going to be causing people to say, let's turn around and head for Nebraska. We want a tour down there instead. So
Any
those are
questions?
two things I think of, but my neighbors to the east also are doing development. And for the same reason, it probably should be maintained regardless of use as something that is not going to be impacting our community as a whole, I would say.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Any other individuals like to speak on behalf of this item? I know there was a lot of hands out there. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question for PJ. With these heavy industrial intents and uses, this list here includes things like warehousing and things that don't really seem too heavy industrial, but I mean, if this was light industrial, what would be the difference?
Let me go grab that.
What did he say?
Well, what's really the difference with heavy and light industrial, given that in heavy industrial we have something like warehousing and because the concern of dust, smoke, and noise are all what we think of when we think of heavy, but we could actually see in this something not quite like that at all.
So I don't think the audience is going to be able to follow along, but I can, if you guys want to look at your heavy industrial list, I can read through the light industrial permitted list. You want me to do that?
Sure.
Okay. Manufacturing, wholesaling, distributing, warehousing, bulk storage, building material sales yards and lumber yards, including sale of rock, sand, gravel, contractors' equipment storage yard, freight or truck yard, public utility service, auction house, tire recapping and retreading, water treatment, purification, storage, and pumping facilities, outdoor advertising signs and billboards. The following uses when conducted within a completely enclosed building: manufacturing, compounding, assembling, or treatment of articles or merchandise, such made from aluminum, bone, cellophane, canvas, cloth, cork. Blacksmithing shops, again, those have to be done within an enclosed shop. Accessory structures, incidental to primary structures such as sleeping facilities, which are occupied by a caretaker or watchman, retail sales, telecommunication facilities, which would be the cell towers, wind energy systems, and solar energy systems. That's light industrial
Light.
permitted, yes.
So there's some overlap.
There's
between
some
light
overlap.
and heavy.
In order to get a building permit or permission to do one of these things in heavy industrial, aren't there guidelines that talk about smoke hazards,
The permitting,
dust, dirt,
permitting process
fencing,
comes up. Yeah.
things like that?
Not so much in the county. If it was a conditional use permit, more so. But there,
Okay.
depending on the use, there could be different local or state or federal guidelines.
Okay. Because I know when I was on the city planning commission, an issue came up regarding, somebody wanted to slaughter animals. They wanted to kill a cow, and they had all kinds of rules and regulations, even though
That'd be a CAFO.
it was in heavy industrial and it was allowed.
And it is one of the allowed uses in this heavy as well.
Exactly. But in the city, there were very special rules and regulations and things that they had to prevent odor, dead flies, I don't know what. all of
Dust,
that.
there's
Dust.
always mitigation for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if in the county, if Mr. Hall were to get a building permit to construct something in heavy industrial, if these folks would be protected from, the wind, the odors, the dust, and things like that.
There's always ordinance 106, which is a county ordinance, not a zoning ordinance. It's the nuisance ordinance. And I can bring that up I don't know why it's showing up so small.
Cute.
Not a good sign.
Where are we here?
I mean, clearly, Pat, you have some intention for wanting it zoned heavy industrial. And I'm assuming, that you have something in mind, but I can't imagine that you would do something that would negatively influence all the neighbors, but
I don't have any intention to do that at all.
I don't know.
I'm a firm believer that there's regulations.
Pat, can you come up here if you're going to talk?
My apologies.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, I asked
No,
him
that's
out of
okay.
line.
I didn't know how it works. We've gone through a lot of this with PJ. They were very cooperative in helping us understand all of the different regulations and concerns. And all I can tell you is, you can base it on the history of things that I've done in our community. There's regulations for anything you do. So today, in today's world, you aren't gonna go build a Black Hills Pack in the middle of this area without a lot of compliance that you have to deal with. We're not asking for anything that, if you notice, the city long use plan to the north even has a, thank you, PJ, for helping out. If you see that black area on the map just before, where you have light industry coming in,
Yeah.
where the number 79 is,
Yeah,
that's heavy industrial that's in there.
yeah, I
So,
understand.
I respect what the gentleman says, that, hey, it was okay for me to look at the Basin Electric thing there, but it certainly wasn't to a lot of people. When that was done, it affects the uses of the land.
That's the use of heavy industrial that you guys are discussing.
Yeah. So the only thing I'm trying to say is that I believe there's enough government regulation, which I've always complied with. If we put something in there, the neighbors are going to come if they don't like it. And there's government regulations to protect the neighbors. And also remember, between the housing development that was referred to earlier and the land, I've still got that zoned residential. So there's a nice buffer in there that's got to be residential before theirs. And then, of course, I've got the gun club over the hill from me. And the guns are shooting towards me, not towards the other people, as far as I know anyhow.
Pat, I do have a question. Looking at the city's projected and what you have projected up there,
Yes.
roughly, if you look at the way the city projects it, it kind of splits your property like right there. So basically, you've got your, on the far west side there, you've got the commercial, then you've got, coming from the west to the east, you've got 3 rows of those blocks, for a better term, I'm gonna call them blocks right now, but that's for the heavy industrial. Is there a way to even consider that you would do like a light industrial more towards the front and kind of step it down and kind of follow the trajectory that the city even has planned?
That, when you look at it though, what I was trying to say, and I understand your question, but the city has heavy industrial in that projection where it's gray. If you see where the number 29 is,
Yes.
that is actual use is heavy industrial.
I'll pull it up here. Hopefully we have it.
Oh, that light gray? I thought that light gray was light industrial.
Well,
It is.
but it is heavy industrial in that future land use plan. And I think you're gonna find that it's realistic to assume that, you're dealing with that Basin Electric in there, which has an impact, right there. Yes.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, if I could, so Pennington County zoning has that property as heavy industrial to the north. The city's future land use has it as light.
Yeah, well, it's heavy industry. When it comes in, it's gonna be heavy industry there. City can't go in and say, hey, this was our future land use, you have to move out of there. That was my point.
Well, my point is they're projected as 20, where that section 29 is, that light gray, that's projected, that trajectory as it's coming down the corridor is projected as light industrial.
Right.
And as it comes onto your property, what I'm saying is there a reason why you didn't consider making it follow within the form of what the?
Question, thank you. Now I understand your question better. The difference between light industrial and heavy industrial, there's a lot of programs that are in light industry that eliminate what could be in his heavy industrial, but there's a lot in heavy industrial that can be used in what's light industrial. It's a real foggy area in between, so that's why I've done it this way. I want to be able to comply with anything that's in heavy industrial. There's some advantages, is what I'm trying to say, that are in the heavy industrial that make your land more saleable, more usable than there is just in the limiting of limited industrial. It limits the land too much. And the worst thing I want to do is go in and develop something and then it doesn't sell in the market. That's bad for us, So I'm trying to work with everyone in the neighborhood. I've not heard from some of these folks, but we always try to do anything we've done in Rapid City with the best of class, and that's what I'll do here, And I'll work. I'm not going to be coming in and asking for an exemption for a smelter or something like that. And you don't have to give it. I hope I answered your question. I just don't think it's reasonable to say, hey, here's the future land use of the city, and we want to follow that way, where within that future land use, there's already heavy industrial. And please don't forget, I don't know when this last drawing was, but you notice how it comes over to the corner of the Basin Electric? That's not practical. I don't own that land, but it's not going to be practical for that to be light industry right up to Basin Electric. You see how the design is drawn there? At that angle.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's just kind of a projected flow fall on the road.
No, you're exactly right. And that's why I say the future land use, I think, changes. And then the commercial zoning that I'm correcting over there is just correcting lines. That's already there. So I think that commercial zoning gives us a nice buffer from the highway and the corridor that comes up. I'm taking the risk on the residential on both sides. Topography is a big reason that I think I can do that.
Any questions? Any further questions for Pat?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any questions for staff? Sir?
Can I just say one more thing?
You can come up here.
Just to kind of clear things up just a little bit.
Lester Freeze again. Now, we got to remember that we're talking about future proposed. See, we're not, I mean, at this point, the city is saying that that's what they may do. How many years down the road? Okay. We're trying to do what's proposed here soon. I don't know. The other thing, a lot of that heavy industrial that we're showing to the, it would be the west of Old Folsom there, where the 28 is and the line goes up and then it goes north and then it goes east. That land pretty much is all owned. The gentleman I bought my land from has a vineyard there. There are a couple homes down in there. And then the rest of that heavy industrial that runs on north on in towards the Thunderdome and whatnot, that's all pasture land. They run cattle on that every year. So, I mean, it's not like we're talking about, you know, we're going to zone that heavy industrial and they're just going to work that right into industrial. You know, the guy that runs the cattle on it is perfectly content in running his cattle. He runs them from that piece of land and he runs them down and up Lamb Road and into more pasture. He's got a lot of farm ranch land there that he runs. So, I mean, it's not like the future proposed heavy industrial is going to be something that's going to happen immediately. And it's, the city is just proposing that. So, you know, you got to see the whole picture before you just make a decision. Maybe take a drive out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
PJ, could you show us this map here zoomed out with the zones and maybe see the nearest
Yeah,
heavy
it only shows up
industrial?
at a certain scale.
Like, I want to know where's the nearest heavy industrial that's actually being used for that purpose.
Okay, so the closest heavy industrial is the one that was mentioned earlier, this swath right here.
And that's developed.
It is developed and currently being used. This,
What is it being used as, PJ?
that's the one that has scrap metal recycling,
Scrap metal.
cars,
Salvage yard.
Yeah.
And where is that in relation on here?
That is.
Oh, right there on the corner. Okay, I see it.
Doop, doop.
Kind of like
This,
right,
it's the black in this
29.
right there.
Right there.
And it goes up further here. Sorry, I'm not a art cartoonist. So.
And where is most of the heavy industrial just surrounding Rapid City? Is it the cement plant area or is it out
I'll
east?
show you here, hold on.
The thought I'm having is,
So-
do we need industrial? Do we need more industrial? And where is the best place for it? Because if this is and appears to be a
Well, there's not a lot of
appropriate
heavy
location.
industrial in the city. I mean, there's some on the east side of 79. I don't recall any
So-
in the Deadwood Avenue area or the,
Because of the scale that this allows, we're gonna have to go kind of piece by piece. So this, where this says 33, that's kind of, let's say that's the center of the subject properties that we're talking about, okay? So going up 79, this is the city's MPO. So this is basically the future land use within their platting jurisdiction. So going up 79, up to the city limits, which is this yellow line, they have light industrial on either side of it. Then going up Old Folsom, the green is our zoning because their MPO, their platting stops along Old Folsom. The black is their heavy industrial, and they do have their residential over here further to the east. And this goes all the way up to where 79 comes, where Old Folsom comes out to 79, and then into the city limits, which is north and west of this yellow line, is their different zoning districts. But that black and gray along that 79, well, along that corridor there, along the railroad track, I guess you can see is, hopefully that answers your question for the type of industrial.
And just south of that, back to the bypass there, and right about there, is all that blue, is that the landfill?
Yeah, they call that public.
Gotcha.
The Trap Club is the same zoning.
It's the same zoning.
It's just this seems to be an appropriate area for heavy industrial, but you know, I totally feel what people are thinking about the agricultural aspect, and that's what it is. So why change it?
Well, if I own property and I wanted to sell it and there would be very big motivation to.
Yeah, I understand the concerns, but can't find a reason to say that it shouldn't be either. I
What-
wanted to comment as well,
Go
in
ahead.
regards to what the public is, have concerns with the neighboring properties and the community in the area, that zoning doesn't just give them the ability to start doing whatever industrial they want. That the next step is where you'd want to step in and make sure that whatever they intend to do would be controlled and not have any adverse effect. So right now, it's just zoning.
Right. PJ, if you don't mind explaining to those who might have some concerns, if this gets rezoned to heavy industrial and some kind of business goes out there, regardless what the business is, there's a process for that. And in most cases, the neighbors will get notified, yes, no, or is it just certain?
No, neighbors would not be notified for building permits. They would be notified for things like rezonings, conditional use permits, variances, that type. But building permits, no, there's no notification that goes out.
So if it's rezoned, heavy industrial, and someone wants to do a structural and reinforcing steel fabrication business, welding business, there's no other further notifications at that point?
If it's listed under section B, so subsection B of section 212, correct. If it's going to be under conditional uses, section 212 subsection C, that's a conditional use permit that requires advertising.
All their notification. So B is an automatic if they pass muster with us, and C is, then it gets notified to the local individuals, the neighbors.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's at least
I can
clarified.
put the uses on the screen if anybody wants, so.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point in time, Jim?
I think we're pretty naive to think that the industrial uses will be pristine and clean and tidy. There's possible it'll be warehouses. I mean, we are not the center of the industrial world by any means, but I think it's very possible there will be some distinct and very real industrial activity going on. I think we should, in all seriousness, I think that's a distinct possibility. No matter what the owner would like to have, if somebody comes in and says, I'm going to lease this from you and I want to do a steel fabricating plant, you're probably not going to say, oh, no, I don't think the neighbors will like that. But I think the reality is what Sonny keeps referring to is that the industrial activity in this part of the country is not quite the same as might be in northern Ohio, or Pittsburgh or someplace. I mean, it's going to be, I think, probably more benign than that, but it still is going to have a kind of robust industrial look to it, But what strikes me is that for years, this property has laid idle. There's been no development in terms of the Black Gap is a nice development. And in some ways, I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't more development to the north of them, but nothing happened with that area. It just remained underutilized as, agricultural pasture land, basically. So I think the reality is that here's an opportunity for something to be done with that property, and if the market will support it, and these gentlemen are putting their money into it, not ours, thank goodness. And they're going to have to find out whether there's, sufficient activity to lease these tracts of land and so forth. I'm inclined to go with Sonny, though, that this seems like a sensible alteration in the zoning that would lead to some kind of meaningful use of this property. And it has laid idle for a long, long time and underutilized, it seems to me. And we are just south of the old Merillat plant and things like that. So it's not like we're in, hills west of Rapid City. So anyway, I'm in favor to support this change.
There just aren't many areas zoned heavy industrial, so if a person wants to do something, build something, start a business, hire people, you know, so on and so forth. Like I say, I've been following the zoning of Rapid City for almost 40 years, and there's a need for heavy industrial. Granted, this is in the county, but, you know, it's close, so.
It'll soon be in the city.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm in favor of the rezone, and I'm going to tell the people out there that you're going to have two more chances to object to this. This will come before the county commission 2 times, first reading and a second reading. So you got other opportunities.
Sonny, do you have anything else?
I'll make a motion to approve the rezone and the comprehensive plan amendment, CA 18-07. Can I do both of them at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? I'm also in favor, I'll just say it right now, I'm in favor of it. You know, just like if any of you guys own a piece of property and you want to develop it, as long as you follow the rules, regulations, county rules, state rules, whatever it was, I'd be in favor of supporting your rights to do what you want to do on your property. So at this point, there's no reason why not to. Just because they're going to rezone doesn't mean it's even going to get developed. They're taking a big risk that we can see. They're hoping it'll pay off, so I would be in favor of this as well. Any further discussion? Yes, PJ.
Sorry, just to follow up on Commissioner Buschrood's, the 2 meetings that will be heard for before the Board of Commissioners would be on Wednesday, January 2nd, no earlier than 10:30, and Tuesday, January 15th, no earlier than 10:30.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 21.
All right. Item 21 is the county board report. The Board of Commissioners will hear the Planning Commission's recommendation from the December 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission meeting at their Tuesday, December 18th board meeting.
Any questions?
Would you say this is going to be heard tomorrow?
No, the December 3rd meeting is going to be heard
Oh,
tomorrow,
okay.
just because they're kind of back to back.
Let's not put anything more on tomorrow than we have.
Ron's like, wait a minute, hold on. All right. Anything further for PJ on that one? If not, item 22, items from the public. Does anyone from the public have anything that they would like to address?
They're all leaving.
They're all leaving, so I would say no. Items from the staff, item 23.
Only items A through C.
No additions? Are you serious?
No additions, subtractions, no. Item A is just an update on the planner 2 and the ordinance enforcement officer. We have completed the hiring process and the offers were accepted. We have an ordinance officer who will be starting on January 2nd. Her name is Amanda. She spent 6 years with Sheriff's Department as a deputy and an investigator. We think she'll do an excellent job as an ordinance officer. And our planner 2 is currently in the process of retiring from the military. He was a planner, is currently a planner in the military, and he'll start in mid-February. I guess it takes a while to retire from the military.
You can say it, Air Force. That's okay.
Oh, I didn't even know. So, it's all right.
Get some Air Force representation in
I
here.
know it was the Air Force, so. With Ellsworth plus the Ellsworth Developmental Authority, some of his insight will be valuable for the development up there.
What is his actual start date? I mean, I know there's a process with that, and we discussed that when we had those interviews, but,
Projecting the 18th of February.
okay.
Sorry, any questions on that? Next item, item B, just a reminder, the comprehensive plan is going to be heard for the first time officially here by the Planning Commission on January 28th, 2019. And any questions on that?
No.
There will be.
There will be eventually, I'm sure.
And then item C is just kind of an end-of-year wrap-up, see how you guys are with the format for the staff reports. For those who have been here for a while, Jim, I know you've been here for a while. They used to be paragraph form, lots and lots of reading. We changed it a long time ago through a commissioner's request. Commissioner Troutman actually was looking for more of the bullet point, just the facts jack type of presentation, which we prefer because it takes out a lot of the ambiguity.
Ambigu-
I'm having some trouble with the
ambiguity.
word today.
I agree with it, the bullet points too. I like them.
Yeah. So if there's anything you guys would like to see differently, let us know for 2019. Yes.
Here's my problem. I know. It would help me if I could just have a clue where some of these places are located.
Okay.
Now, I know that I could probably go into Rapid Map, get the township, the ranges section, zero in, zero out. But if there's some way that, you show me maps, but if I'm not familiar with the roads,
Okay.
and if there could be a dot that says, here's Wall, here's Keystone, here's,
So what we've done is some of the older site maps have focused in.
yeah,
What we've done now, and this is a great example of it, is we've identified the subject property by highlighting it in that yellow and red and
yes.
labeling it subject property.
Yeah, and then I can see Hill
And then a
City.
major location, that's how we've been doing it now. So
Yeah.
those will be in the staff report. Sometimes you'll get older site maps like this where they didn't show that. We were just recycling what was already done.
I see.
But we can, moving forward, just do them like this.
Okay,
For
yeah,
some of the
because
older
that,
stuff.
that just helps me to get it in perspective. But yes, I
Not
could
just
go the
you, a
extra
lot of
mile.
people.
I could go on Rapid Map, I could zip in and zip out.
Yeah, and there was a lot of concern with that. Also, if you do go to Rapid Map, and you can do the search feature for the tax ID, we do include the tax ID on the front page of the staff reports.
Oh, okay, then
And
that
it's
will be simple for me.
the faster way to find it.
I hadn't thought of that.
That's it. Nothing to add, even at the end.
Well, I was checking, does anybody else have anything?
Well, I think I commented earlier when I first came back on the board that the photos have been much more extensive and precise in terms of showing properties and geography and your geographical features so that you get some feeling for where this is and what's around it and what kind of environment it's in. Because I know that became the motivation for people to say, well, I'm going to drive out there to so-and-so because I have no idea what the terrain's like and so on and so forth. But I thought you've done a good job of adding those things. And some may say there's lots, you're adding pages, but I think they're constructive.
Do you like seeing the photos included near the text, not just at the back?
Well, I always, I guess that's not a problem. It might be more constructive if it was near the text, yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at like item 20, which
Right.
had a lot of photos.
Right, yeah.
And we do it with a lot of these reports now is we'll still do some in the back, but we figured instead of having to flip back and forth between this text and
Sure.
the back, just
Yeah,
putting
that's
it
a
in
good
there.
point, yeah.
But some photos require a larger view, so
Oh.
we'll put those in the end if we feel like they're needed. But no, these are valuable feedback, so
Been very helpful, I thought.
the staff's doing a great job with it too. Thank you.
The only thing I can think of that would be added value to the pictures, and y'all can tell me if I'm wrong, but sometimes when you're looking at a picture, especially the ones you went through today, now I know those weren't in the staff report, but you have sometimes in the staff report of like you're looking down the road or you're looking into a pasture. Maybe putting it, and I'm gonna say bright white letters, what way you're looking,
okay.
looking
North,
west
south, east, west.
from, Old Folsom Road or something. That way, whenever we're looking at, when we're going through those, we at least can have a reference point of, okay, because I look at them, I'm like, okay, I see it, but I don't have a reference point to understand which
I always
way I'm
figured
looking.
north is up, but
But if you're doing
Yeah.
a 360 of the property, you may
yeah,
not know
you're
which way
right.
is north.
Well, that's
So
true.
Okay.
that's about the only thing I could add, and it wouldn't have to be anything big. I mean, you could use, at Folsom Road looking northwest, from, I don't know, what was it, 256 or whatever the road, looking northwest
Okay.
or whatever. I don't know. But it would give you a general reference point of how you're looking at it. That's
Plan
the
on
only thing
seeing
I
that
can.
in January.
Anything else?
Let me say that I'll admit to a disability that I've labored under for a long time, and it really comes through on these zoning maps. I'm colorblind, and so when you have greens and reds and browns, and I mean, half the time I can't see one from another. I've always thought it would be ideal if there was a number for each that was imposed on those, either and I don't even know if that would be technically possible. Black or white, so that it's shown up, so I
That's a good idea.
I could connect it and say, oh yeah, okay, so that's that's brown, that's light industrial or whatever, you know. But for
Sure.
me, that's
Like
always been
number
a.
2 is
Yeah.
commercial,
Number two is,
residential, yeah.
And it would be for the handicapped like me, but,
You're not the only one.
other than that.
No, it's definitely a good
Well, yeah,
comment.
it's a common trait
Comment.
amongst men.
Well, my printer's handicapped, it doesn't, you can type in blue ink anymore,
Yeah.
so.
I think it's an accommodation we can definitely do.
Anyway, that might be. It might even be more for other, patrons, not just us. I mean, people who look at those maps, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
All right. Any other inputs for staff? All right. And then that means,
I move to adjourn.
well, items from membership first. Good try. Anybody have anything? If not, then we can move to an adjournment. All right, Sandy, you're up.
I move to adjourn as long as I can still ask the question about the mining thing afterwards.
I don't think it's part of the agenda, so
it's not
afterwards
part of
probably
the
more
agenda.
appropriate.
Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do you have a quorum?
We do. Where's 4 of us? So I would look, that was real quick. I was like, wait, we better have 4 of us. All in favor, we all said aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Don't tell me for.